Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Whoa.
This is
Can
so
we introduce ourselves?
yeah. Why don't we go ahead and do that?
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm the co-artistic director of Theater and Asylum.
I'm Paul. I'm the other co-artistic director.
I'm Catherine. I'm the managing director of Theater and Asylum.
I'm Hillary. I'm the new community engagement manager, and I'm going to ask these lovely people some questions today because I'm new and I actually don't know the answers to all these things. So it's like good for me to ask these questions too. So we're obviously you have laid out an entire timeline of the history of Theater and Asylum because we're coming up on an anniversary, and so we're going to start all the way to the very beginning. So your first piece was about Nijinsky, correct?
Yes, it was about Vaslav Nijinsky. He was a Russian dancer and choreographer. When the Russian Revolution was starting to heat up, as well as World War One, he moved to Paris, where Sergei Diaghilev was forming the Ballet Russe, and he danced there. He also had an affair with this producer, Sergei Diaghilev, as well as with another dancer in the company named Romila Polsky. And not only did he revolutionize dance, but his career was incredibly short-lived. He had tumultuous affairs with both of these people, and caught between them and between everything that was going on, he had a break and was imprisoned in mental institutions for the last 30 years of his life. But when he was there, he wrote a diary, which we found to be absolutely incredible. And we created a show to try to provide him with a different kind of asylum, a safe haven, a space to tell his story, and a space for us to think about and contemplate his story. So yeah, we created Nijinsky in Asylum, and that was our very first show.
We just touched on it a little bit in telling like why you were inspired, but like what started this process? What made you all be like, I want to make this play, I want to tell this story?
Uh, you know, like every piece of art, I assume that everything's all about me, and I'm constantly searching for the artists that and the stories that can help me process my own life. And many of the things in Nijinsky's life seemed to parallel things that I was working through and things that I was questioning. And in our senior year, so Katie and I had met and been friends since freshman year of college, but then senior year, we had this magical opportunity to create literally whatever we wanted. There was like so little constraint on the kind of work we were doing. So I brought this idea to Katie of, let's take this diary that like deals with so many things I'm working through. And Katie was like, oh, fabulous. There's this wonderful choreography. It revolutionized everything. Let's get music, let's get dancers. And we created a silent piece. But yeah, some of the driving forces to make the piece were to ask questions about mental stability, about perceptions of insanity in others, free will, whether or not it's appropriate to imprison someone and institutionalize someone, and what does it mean when you do that while trying to help them, and how does love and insanity and freedom all interplay.
Amazing. And Catherine, you were part of this process as well. Can you let us know a little bit about what the process of creating this piece was and like the entire um, lifespan of it, I guess?
So I came into the project when Paul and Katie were remounting it after they had graduated, and I was the stage manager, and I came in sort of in the middle of the process, but it it was a rehearsal room that I had never encountered before. It was extremely collaborative, and we were actually rehearsing where Paul worked, which is a children's. What's coming to my mind is children's playground, but it was a Montessori school and a daycare, and and the process, the process was extremely collaborative and very intense, something that I had never really experienced. And you had no words, so you really had to draw on movement and music, and but also be telling a story.
Totally. Well, I'm seeing the theme between Nijinsky and Asylum and maybe Theater and Asylum. So, Katie, could you maybe tell us about like what the inspiration was to name the company Theater and Asylum?
Well, truly, it was just a stroke of genius. I really clearly remember after we'd done the show, a few weeks later, we were in this wonderful bar that doesn't exist anymore called Dempsey's on the East Village. And Paul and I were there, and we were just chatting about the show and the success of it, and we were really proud of it and all sorts of stuff. And we were like, well, like if we were to do this for real, we would probably need a name, right? And as we thought about that, it was like, yeah, we need a name. And so I just threw out Theater in Asylum, and we thought it just like really fit and stuck and sounded awesome. And like Paul was saying, it was the idea of a safe space for first of all ourselves, for us to make the work we wanted to make and bring people in to make that work with us, but also for the kind of the characters and topics and subjects we were interested in exploring. It started with putting the ideas of mental health and mental stability in artists in Asylum, so we could really talk about that and explore it and rip it apart and put it back together again. And then we've put just every other topic that we can think of and that we've made a show about in our little incubator where we create the work, we question it, we make rigorous research, we do all sorts of stuff in our little very positive asylum.
Awesome. Well, Theater and Asylum has definitely made me look at the word asylum in a very different way than I would have beforehand, and just like question about like what asylum actually is and like way we look at it. So, obviously, Theater and Asylum has worked with a lot of different organizations over the years, but the first commission was with Horse Trade. Am I right? Can one of you speak a little bit about that first commission and that like partnership?
Yeah, so with Horse Trade, we applied, and we had only been a company for about a year and a half at this point, and we applied saying we would create from scratch 3 full-length shows and present them within 10 months of each other. And that is exactly what we did. And in addition to putting up these shows, and the phenomenal, incredible support that we got from Horse Trade, I feel like that season made us like a company, right? It made us like a real thing with a huge body of work. That was just incredible.
Okay, well, what a huge undertaking for the very first collaboration of as a company ever. Bravo. So going to Olé now. Now, Olé was relatively early in the TIA timeline. So can someone tell me a little bit about what this show was first, and then we'll get to some other things.
Yeah, Olay started during that year at Horse Trade. It was one of the 3 shows that we created very quickly. And it tells the story of a love affair that happens between poet Federico Garcia Lorca and painter Salvador Dali. The 2 of them met during university. Their affair was brief but intense. And after they kind of broke up, they had a years-long correspondence, sending letters to each other, debating art and love and responsibility and country. And this was while Francisco Franco, a fascist, was rising in power in Spain. Spain was about to descend into civil war. And we were really interested in the role and responsibility of an artist during such humongous political events like that. Dali was very much a proponent of, artists are supposed to make art by any means necessary. So go where you can do that. So Dali went to Paris and, had a amazing career that, you can get the melting clocks image on t-shirts and mugs in every museum in the world now. And Federico Garcia Lorca, on the other hand, really believed in a sense of nationhood and people. And he also followed this concept called El Duende, which is this animating life force that can only be achieved when facing death. And he believed that he needed to stay in Spain as not just an artist, but as specifically a Spanish artist. And he went right back to his hometown where Francisco Franco's forces could easily find him. And we really thought it was so amazing that, like, we think that Lorca knew what he was doing. It was not a safe climate for homosexuals or socialists or people as outspoken and well-known as Lorca. And yet he went, he stared down these dangerous forces, and he was assassinated. So the piece followed them from their meeting, through their affair, through the letter correspondence, and up through the assassination of Lorca, kind of ending with Dali speculating and wondering and remembering if he made the right choice.
I'm very sad that I wasn't in New York at the time that you all were doing this, because it sounds exactly like something that I'm interested in. Did this show have spoken word, or is this one of the ones that was more movement based?
This one was a really, really awesome hybrid. So once Sentencing in the Asylum was over, we did start adding words back in, slowly and surely. But this had 4 characters in it. It was actor playing Salvador Dali, an actor playing Federico Garcia Lorca, and it was a flamenco dancer and then a guitarist. And the flamenco dancer was representing a variety of things, but specifically was there to highlight and call on the force of Duende, which was so important in Lorca's work and in Andalusia, where Lorca was based. And so she is this force that is representing Spain and home and the pull of that. And she kind of dances around and with and through these 2 men. And then we have the guitarist, who is also working with her in creating the world. We almost entirely used the 2 men's own writing, so their own letters, and then also the various poems and Dali's autobiography, just various writings and such that they actually created themselves. So it was a lot of found text, which was really cool.
Awesome. And so after the commission at Horse Trade, this show toured both in the United States and abroad. What was that like?
Expensive. It was fun. It was the first time that the very first time that we had performed outside of New York City. It was kind of in 2 separate goes. The first was a little regional tour, and now I don't remember the order, but we went to the Rochester Fringe Festival, the Chicago Fringe Festival, and then we also performed at the Carriage House Theater in Hartford, which is near where I grew up. And it was just so fun to load up a car, and my mom drove the car most often, and just to set up in these places and to perform it in not only different spaces, but with different groups of people who have varying levels of familiarity with the stories that we were so familiar with. You know, we went to theater school, and Lorca is just a legend for the plays he wrote. And it was really cool to bring it to communities outside of New York. Anyways, a year later, we had the opportunity to go to the Prague Fringe Festival, which was this huge international festival with artists from all over the world. And we performed in the basement of this church, and it like felt like a cave, and it was just like it was amazing and so cool to be in another country, but it was also a huge logistical endeavor, something that we had never done before, a theme of everything we do. But you know, where someone says yes, we'll say, great, we know how to do that, whether or not we do. And it was really fun to figure out how to grow in that way as a company, and working with Samantha Keogh, who's our company manager. And yeah, it was just really amazing.
Yeah, I just want to say, so Samantha Keogh, she had already started becoming a part of Theater and Asylum back in Revolutionary 1 as a performer. And she was so amazing. We wanted to keep her around. And so she ended up, I'm not exactly sure if she volunteered, she was coerced, what happened, but she was our tour manager, company manager for the Prague tour. And at that point, she was working at a museum on the Lower East Side, and we would meet like first thing in the morning at a Starbucks across the street. She would have this binder of paperwork, and we just worked as hard as we possibly could to organize traveling the show across an ocean. But it was largely to her and her dedication and her organization that it happened.
Wow, amazing. Samantha's definitely probably one of the most organized people I've ever met in my entire life. So, in addition to full-length shows, TIA has also done cabarets throughout the years. And so the very first cabaret, if I'm right, was called the Death Memory Project. Can one of you tell me a little bit about that? That seems very ominous to me.
Yeah, we wanted a bunch of people to make art all together in one night, and we wanted them to do it around a theme or a topic. So we thought, so I don't know exactly how we came up with the Deaf Memory Project, but the prompt was, how can you combine these two ideas? How do these two things interact with each other? And so we sent that prompt out to musicians that we knew and various theater artists that we'd known in college, and also people we had met in the year out of college, people all three of us knew from all sorts of places and walks of life. And we all came together in this ginormous, like 3-hour unwieldy, like performance after performance after performance. We served grilled cheese. Like, it was wild. And it was awesome. It was just such an incredible gathering of way too many people in one room. So much just like art and passion and interest and variety jammed together. Just a bunch of people trying stuff out and then having a conversation about not only the trying, but the putting it all together and how the pieces juxtapose and add to each other. So that was our first cabaret.
Yeah, and it was really wonderful to see all these different people getting at the same idea. How does death accrue into memory? My father had passed not long before, and it was an issue that I was thinking about a lot. And one of the pieces that Theater Asylum had been working on and off for a while was called The Persistence of Annabel Lee, based on the Edgar Allan Poe poem Annabel Lee, as well as 2 paintings by Salvador Dali, The Persistence of Time and The Disintegration of the Persistence of Time. And we were just obsessed with the way that it's not clean how the death of someone becomes a memory. It's a mixed up and often tumultuous and painful process, but one that is so cherished and valued by all people everywhere. So we were trying to get at, like, what does that look like? We created one piece to give one option as to how it happens, and it was really awesome to see a bunch of other people speculating and wondering on the same process of how does death become memory. And over the years, we've done that with lots of different ideas. We have created cabarets about the concept of the other and who is the other in society. We made a piece called the Trending Imperatives Project, which was about how different things are called imperative at different times. And recently we've created cabarets on political ideas, like more explicitly electoral ideas. We've been making the debates, and alongside them, we did these cabarets, one based on healthcare, one based on the climate crisis, one based on the nebulous idea of electability. And each time we created some sort of piece to try to get at this idea, and we invited a whole bunch of guest artists to do the same. And we hopefully created a diverse experience for the audience, where they're not just given one answer, they're given a bunch of contradictory answers and are then left with hopefully more questions than they walked in with.
So Theater and Asylum has historically been always around collaboration, but really with like Paul, Catherine, and Katie at the helm of all the projects. But at a certain moment with a couple of different projects, you started to invite other lead artists in as more like leadership and collaborations. And so, if I'm right, those shows were about the Bronte sisters, and then Totally Wholesome Foods, and then Hephaestus. So, I have assigned you all to each of them to tell me about them. So, Katie, will you tell me a little bit about the Bronte process, like the Bronte piece, and like what that process was like, and the other artists that you worked with, who they were, and what it was like bringing in, bringing them into your sacred space.
Yeah, so the first collaborator we found for the Brontes was Lucas. He was the composer. He and I had worked on a piece earlier, and then he came and saw Olay immediately after we had worked on this piece. And he was really struck by it and really jazzed by it and really, really into it. And so when I reached out to him a year or two later, I was like, I want to write a musical. How could we do that? He was like, I'm in. And part of the reason we picked the Brontes was because they felt just along in the same universe as Olay, of these artists that were very attached to their time period, but somewhat misunderstood both then and also moving forward and into throughout all of history and into our time. So we wanted to just give them a new context and a new awakening for their stories. And so that started, and then we met Sarah, our lyricist. He already knew Sarah, but Sarah was brought to the project just a few weeks later once we had fallen on this idea. And it was an awesome, awesome match. We worked on the show for years, and then we presented it at the Old Stone House in Park Slope. And we are just so proud and excited by it. Yeah, it was a really, really beautiful. I think I grew up with my absolute favorite theater memories being outdoor theater. So having the musical that I created and directed being performed outside with just this stunning period brick house behind, or stone house behind us as we performed, was just so evocative and exciting and just elevated the whole thing. We had a beautiful orchestra conducted by Cynthia and amazing performers. And we just learned so much, and it was such a magical thing that was brought into the world.
The next show, I actually was supposed to come see this one, but I had the stomach flu the day that I was supposed to come see it. But Totally Wholesome Foods is one that I want to hear about from Catherine.
So Totally Wholesome Foods was a play written by Alice Pencavel, and Alice and Paul had worked on a piece earlier that Paul did sort of outside of Theater Asylum, and Totally Wholesome Foods was a piece that he brought to Katie and me, and it is funny and but also really makes you think, and is, just questioning how progressive and how aware are people, especially of our generation, who, want to be helping the environment and want to be eating organic food and but at the same time, the establishments that we might be shopping at or going to could be creating a lot more evil than good in some ways. And we did it at the EAG, so the Episcopal Actors Guild, in this very small space that didn't really look like a theater at all necessarily. It had all of these old, I feel like old bookcases, and Paul created a space that really, used all of it. And
with the help of the incredible Dan Daly, our set designer.
Yeah. And it was special to me because I had moved to California at that point, and I hadn't been back for many productions, and I was able to come back for this and have some family members come, and it was really, it was hilarious and delightful. Definitely makes me think about every time I go shopping at Whole Foods, and it was playful and I think my favorite part was that we had this toy. What was it? A toy
Like a bulldozer.
bulldozer that came at the end and destroyed everything. It's just very
Like a
just
little
fun.
toy, and
Yeah.
these grown adults were petrified of it.
Yeah, it was great. So
I'm sad I missed it. And then lastly, or at least for this conversation, a recent production, like right before quarantine really hit, was Hephaestus. And Paul, will you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, Hephaestus was written by the amazing Willie Johnson. He is a poet and a playwright and a teacher and an activist and this really extraordinary human who, one of the things I so admire about his work style is that he doesn't just research the background of any of the things that he is writing about, he researches the theory behind it. So not only were we doing this play about the Greek god Hephaestus, which went into all sorts of Greek myths, but he was really getting at theory of labor and human value, as well as ability and disability, as well as beauty and divinity. And there was just such a high level conversation that was able to happen atop this hilarious show that was filled with juxtapositions. It was such a special experience, and working at LPAC with Handan and with these incredible actors right before COVID hit in New York City. It was so awesome.
I just wanted to highlight that Hephaestus, in addition to Willie and the amazing actor, it had phenomenal designers and a composer, but in particular, Dan Stearns, who has done so much for Theater Asylum and is our just absolute favorite collaborator. He worked on the very first production of Nijinsky while we were still in school, has worked on so much since. We would be completely lost without him. And one of the amazing things about Hephaestus was that we were in the main stage space of LPAC. So while we didn't have the audience sitting in the 900 seat auditorium part, it was all taking place on stage, but we just had access to so many more lights and just able to do so many more interesting things. And we finally gave Dan the tools that he could kind of show off with more than our typical just like clip lights. And it was just incredible to see what he built with such a big, beautiful palette.
One of my favorite parts, and really the thing I've been most involved in, which has been cold readings. And so I think a lot of people in our community have been either have known about cold readings or have been involved in them. So I won't spend too much time on them. I just would like to ask what some of your favorite memories, either from the ones that we've done while we've been in quarantine or before times, like what are some of those, and like maybe what is one of the favorite plays that you've read?
I'm ready. I'll go first. Cold readings are awesome. They are so much fun. Typically, they happen once a month when we're in person. Now they're happening every week, and especially now they're happening every Wednesday. It is such an awesome thing to hold and to like wait down a week, and to know that we get to see a somewhat consistent group of people, where it's with a lot of people coming in and out every week, which has been so special and amazing to kind of go through, to have something that is so constant that I can look at through this entire time. We've read a lot of great plays in quarantine, honestly, that have been really wonderful plays in discussion. But for me, one of my most current favorite memories is reading The Mystery of Irma Vep, which happened in February, immediately before COVID. It was the last in-person one. It was a very small group of us. We read the play. It was just like, we didn't know what to expect with this play. And it was wild. And it was just like, it was so obvious that reading it aloud was so important to getting the work. And also that it was so funny. I just feel like I hadn't laughed at a piece of art that smart and that much. I think the laughs were so smart And also we were laughing so much. And that was really, really wonderful to remember. Also, sometimes we do musicals as Cold Readings, which is wild and its own story. But I think my favorite one of those was You're in Town.
I love just Cold Readings as an opportunity to learn more about playwrights and plays that I don't know with other people. I learn best with other people. And, you know, getting in a room with people to go into some playwrights and artists that I admire. I think back to the plays we've read by Taylor Mack and Carol Churchill and Bertolt Brecht, and we read a couple plays that the San Francisco Mime Troupe did. And, you know, I can assess what sticks out to me in a play and what I'm obsessed with, but to hear other people identify what sticks out to them and what questions that it makes them think about. I just love comparing my experience to the experience of others, and I think it makes me understand the plays better and really helps me learn. And I love the opportunity to learn with the other people that come to Cold Readings.
So moving on to another project that I was involved in, because that's what I'm excited about. I'm kidding. Let's talk about the debates a little bit, which is a huge project that has spanned from the 2016 election to the 2020 election and has taken on many different forms in the process. What are some things that are like, how has the process evolved from 2016 to 2020? We'll start there and go from that.
I guess I'll start. The earliest experiments of the debates actually happened at the Hangar Theater in Ithaca. I had a residency there, and I was attempting to, Katie and I had been talking and working with the Kennedy-Nixon debate from 1960. And while in Ithaca, I tried staging some of these experiments that we wanted to try. And it was really amazing. The thing we found was like the process of going through the debate was more interesting to us than that particular debate itself. And people kept wanting to talk about the format of the current debate. This was right as the 2016 election was getting started. And at the time, the debates were ramping up, and it was going to be not only Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, but also Martin O'Malley and two other candidates, Lincoln Chafee and Jim Webb. And, you know, and at the time we thought like that was a big field, 5 candidates. When we came to New York, we created a series of adaptations around those 5 candidates, and it eventually dwindled to just Bernie and Hillary. But you know, and we were so grateful when it dwindled, because then we could dig into Bernie and Hillary's policies so much deeper. But then in 2020, the big difference is that there were, you know, 5,000 candidates. And some of the debates were split across 2 nights because there were too many. And it didn't dwindle. There was only one debate in the 2020 Democratic primary season that had less than 7 candidates. You know, and it was the one in quarantine between Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden in the CNN with no audience, which was actually much more similar to the 1960 Kennedy-Nixon debate where there was no audience. Yeah, so the process has really evolved for the political climate. I think it's really interesting that like Hillary was always a front runner and Joe Biden was not a front runner in the same way. Bernie Sanders was rising from relative obscurity to those not on the left during 2016, and he was a known entity in 2020 in a new way. And one of the things I really love about the debates is that in asking questions about the candidates, I think that we're all asking questions about ourselves. Who do we want to not only lead us, but who do we want to represent and literally speak for us on a stage unimaginably large and important? And I really love that one of the things the debates does is it puts the words of these seemingly untouchable people, these politicians, these presidents, into not regular, but like into like much more approachable people, actors, and even non-actors, but getting people like us to say these words and to try on the candidates the way that actors try on characters all the time. So it's been a really special process, and I love how it's evolved to the times.
Yeah, I just want to say one of the other things that changed was kind of the not only who was participating, but the quality in which they were bringing to the piece itself. Because back in 2015, 2016, we had so many actors who showed up saying, well, I'm not really that political. I don't really know a lot, but I really want to learn and I really want to engage. And this was the way to learn and engage. And I think doing the process just taught us all so much, right as like our contemporary politics were like building and about to explode. So I do think we made a very mini new class of people who felt really confident to be able to pay attention and know how to pay attention and know what to do because of that. Creating the Debates 2020 was very different because the people, especially the people who were attracted to the project, were very involved already, just knowing what was happening in our country. And I think that not necessarily the role of the artist, but like the mentality of the artist right now has really changed from 2016 till now. And I think that's a really, really exciting change and Theater and Asylum has been able to push like politics and theater together, and like what does it mean to make a kind of political work in this new in this era, and I think that's really, really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a trend throughout all of the things you all talked to me about was agency and asylum and like politics and being actively engaged and like involved. And that's just kind of what, as a relative outsider, now insider, I've observed of Theater and Asylum. And so to wrap it all up, I know that, you know, you are in the process of like imagining what comes next, maybe with your vision and other things. So what's next for Theater and Asylum?
Yeah, so we are so excited to be celebrating 10 years and to have been able to take this moment to really look back and really, really think about kind of who we are and how we've changed and what we've made and what we want to do next. So we want to keep going. We are stoked to keep going and to keep providing asylum to a bunch of different people and ideas and thoughts for a much longer period of time. So we, several months ago, we started the conversation of kind of cracking open our mission, vision, and values to see how it had guided us these past 10 years, but also how we had grown out and through and around it. So we are in the active process that will be done by the time you see this video maybe, of redesigning our mission and our vision and our values. And we are so excited to present those and to have them really reflect 2020 and where we are now, especially related to Theater and Asylum's commitment for creating an anti-racist company and society, in addition anti-oppression and just all of the things that we need to get rid of in order for human beings to be truly honored and understood and represented and valued, and also have the opportunities that all human beings should. So we are excited for that future and for Theater and Asylum to play its part in creating that new world.
Yeah, it's been, I've been so grateful to be able to take this time and look back at all the work that we've done and imagine what we want to do in the future and go through our mission and be more explicit with the world we want to see and the actions that we are going to take to get there. And also to be diving into new obsessions. We have been obsessed recently with this incredible unsung hero, Hallie Flanagan. She was the director of the Federal Theater Project during the 1930s, using federal money, like tax money, to put artists to work and to put theater artists to work and to make that theater available not only to the working class with extremely cheap tickets, but all over the country. She decentralized the theater industry from New York. And, you know, she did all these incredible things, and it blows my mind that she's not more well known. So we've been looking at, like, how did she transform the industry the way she did? How did she get the power and the tools and the collaborators she needed to do that? And yeah, what can we learn from that today? And now that the world is upside down and in so many ways, and it's so dangerous and threatening to so many different people. How can we look to big actions that were taken by artists in the past, artists like Hallie Flanagan, and how can we either take similar actions, or how can we learn from the big actions that those kinds of artists took? Because we know that, you know, the time for incrementalism is over. We need big action now from not only our political leaders, but I think also from our activists and from our artists. So I'm really grateful that Theater Asylum is taking the time to not only learn about people who did similar things in the past, but also to look at what we are going to do with our mission and our work. So yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Any more thoughts? Cool.
Thank you, Hillary. This was so wonderful. Thank you so much for interviewing us.
I didn't know any of this, which is amazing. Up until that point.
And thank you to everybody who is watching and who has been a part of Theater Asylum in big ways and small ways, and in and out and through for the past 10 years. We look forward to being with you and in community with you for the next long time.
Thank you.